Alrighty, folks, welcome to the 100 Day Project, Day 3. Like day 2, today's painting started out intuitively. I kind of wanted to replicate or take a different spin on a mark making painting I did a couple of days ago that kind of looked like the entrance to a cave. So I made these swooping marks, but as I did it, I saw a face, surprise, surprise. And you can see where I added that shadow in there where the eye goes and I pulled the nose out a little bit. It's a sun face sort of being. So, so my intention with this project was to do work that's figural. And if you follow me at all or are familiar with my work, my interpretation of figural tends to be a little more abstract, a little more fantastical, maybe whimsical. I would say this piece crosses that border into whimsical pretty well. Loosely interpreted. I'll put it that way in terms of my adherence to the idea of doing something figural. I would say this is a figure of sorts. So I'm still counting it for the project. But again, the idea with these projects is to be free to practice creativity every day. And for me, it was to really explore all these different aspects of figural painting and drawing, which will come up here in some subsequent weeks. So I'm just playing with inks, and to be honest, I had kind of a busy day today, and so I'm just using the inks that were already on my table. I have a studio upstairs in our home, and then I've got a space downstairs for creating where I have most of my inks and watercolors and some acrylics, and then I save the more what sort I'm looking for, not caustic necessarily, but the mediums that I don't necessarily want downstairs where we eat and stuff like that, like oil and caustic, things like that, I do upstairs. So I don't have all of my inks with me up here. I brought a handful up for the projects I've done the last couple of days, and I'm just using what was in front of me, which a mix of the Sennelier, that cobalt blue hue, which is that gorgeous blue, and then some Liquitex titanium white, some burnt sienna, which I really only used once and didn't come back to, and then Daler Rowney in flame orange, the brilliant yellow, the purple lake, which is probably my absolute favorite color, and then a dark green, which is like a phthalo green. So very much a primary palette. I almost always work in some form of red, some form of yellow, some form of blue. My red being a little bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit of the purple lake in this example. But I'm digging this pen. I'm having a lot of fun making some of those smaller marks with the glass dip pen. I think there's probably a technique that I could practice more with it because it doesn't seem to suck up a lot of ink for me. And I can only imagine that I'm using it incorrectly or something. Like I feel like it should hold more ink than it does for me. So if you have any tips and tricks on that, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Another thing I decided to do today was switch up my brushes. So I have a round brush I've been using for the last two paintings and it's broken. I don't spend a lot of money on brushes because I'm really hard on them. And this particular brush I really like. I don't even know what size it is anymore because the ferrule has come off and I have to like stick it on to use it. So I don't know if I want to get a crimper and try and crimp it back onto the handle or glue it or whatever. It's just a basic round brush. It's probably a size 6, maybe a size 8. I just like it holds a good amount. And when I'm using acrylic ink, I don't like to use my nicer watercolor brushes, even though I will wash my brushes really well. I just don't want to take the chance that they might get a little bit of acrylic ink in there because there's an acrylic binder polymer but I don't want to gunk up my watercolor brushes. But I do like that one because it holds a lot of water. So I switched up to a bigger round brush. These are the Simply Simmons, which I love. I use these in my classes. They're like practically indestructible. Work really, really well with acrylic, work really, really well with acrylic ink and watercolor. So I'm using a size 10 for that, which is a little bit bigger than the one I'd been using. But I also brought out a couple of flats, and I didn't use the bigger one, but I used the smaller one, the 5/8 one. Again, super inexpensive brushes, like craft store in the art section, but craft store brushes. And you'll see me use it in a little bit. And I really like it because I like inexpensive brushes for two reasons. One, because I'm hard on them and I don't want to ruin $300 brushes. The other reason is that they don't always hold their bristles together really nicely, which is one of the reasons why they might be on the less expensive side. But what I like about that is the bristles will splay and I'll get some really cool marks. So you'll see that come up here in a minute. I'm working on his face and just kind of trying to give some dimension to his cheek and layering. Something you're going to see me do a lot here is layer. And with acrylic ink, it dries a little bit slower than watercolor. It's pretty dry in our house, so fairly quickly, but I'll move to different parts of the painting while I'm letting other places dry. And even though the acrylic isn't going to move on me because it's got an acrylic binder, I do want to let it dry before I come in with another layer. So you'll see me move around to different parts of the painting. And I'm just adding some splatters here for fun at this point, giving it a little pizzazz. The shape on my figure is still really flat. I'm getting some good dimension in his face, which I'm liking. But the darker orangey part is still very flat. So I'm letting that dry before I go in and add some more mark making to it. And I'm using some titanium white to mix with some of that green and brighten up his eye a little bit, and then adding some more splatters as I go. One of the things I've noticed, so there is a bit of a difference between the Daler Rowney acrylic ink and the Liquitex acrylic ink. Liquitex comes in colors that matches their line. So for example, I'm a big fan of the vivid red orange color. You can get that in their basics line of acrylics. You can get it in their ink. Here is where my brush, see how it's making those kind of, looks like frilly marks almost. I'm just going straight into that violet color. I love that. But the Liquitex paints match their professional and their basics line, so you get the same colors. But they act a little bit different from the Daler Rowney in some ways. Sometimes they might lift a little bit for me. And I have found their titanium white to be not quite as opaque as the Daler Rowney one. So it's been interesting because I've really been using that Liquitex one the last few days just to like explore it a little bit more. And I've noticed as I've been using it day over day that it isn't quite as opaque. So I think that's interesting. It's good to try different ones and test them out. So here he is. Here's my little guy. I like the dimension I was able to get with those brush strokes and kind of the tie-dye sort of feel. It's very much that whimsical kind of tie-dye celestial sort of thing. So that's day 3. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you follow along. Please do tag me if you're doing this yourself. I'd love to see what you're doing. Take care.